Howdy chaps, and welcome back. We are celebrating 2,000 subscribers today and tackling some bodywork on the XY here. Now I'll show you through this in a second, but we are nearly done. Nearly done. I am going to be tackling some bog work today. I don't like showing it that much too often, but periodically it is good to slip it in there. I do a lot of metal work. I much prefer to do that, it's more fun. But bog work is also part and parcel of restoration. So on this one we're not trying to get it perfect, because this is going off to a painter and he's going to probably go over the whole body again. What we're trying to do is give him a head start and just rough it out so that he doesn't have to like do tons of body work. He just can tickle it a little bit and be happy about it, because that's what I like to do. I like to get the steel work done and then do the majority of the bog work, and then ideally in a perfect world I'd send it off to a painter and have them just tweak it a little bit in their own right and then paint it themselves. I mean, I'll probably paint things myself, but only for myself. But we're going to do that in this video. Just big shout out to all of the just the new subscribers. The love has been incredible. Also very happy to see that the engine build video, which was a bit of a shonky re-ringer, actually went really well. I was a bit stunned by that. I guess it's a good thing. Yeah, so the channel was plodding along quite nicely. I've noticed a couple other channels are doing very well. Don's Tricks, you cracked 1,000. Congratulations, buddy. I noticed that he's going along fairly well. Fat Fords, that's a PHAT. His coup's coming along very nicely. I wish I had that shed. Obviously, Automotive Carnage, DJ is back in it. I was so stoked to see that. There's a few others. Yeah, there's just some really good YouTubers out there who are doing quite well. So yeah, we'll get stuck into this and see how we go. So here we go, we're going to be tackling the bodywork on here. We're just going to be putting pretty much a skim of filler on it just so we can rough it out for the painter. I mean, it's not too bad right now, but what I want to do is get rid of all the surface rust that's just under that old etch primer and just make it a bit pretty. I want to basically bare metal the whole quarter panel, super clean, make sure there's no rust, make sure there's no gaps in any welds like right here, because you know I'm not perfect, but this is why I come back and just check things before things are done. So then we'll just zap up any welds once it's bare metaled and the rust, it's all surface rust is gone. We'll do a skim of filler, and I'm pretty sure I'm only going to have to go through from here to here, the two style lines. Fairly flat surface, should be fairly easy. If you've been following my Graham's Restorations Facebook page, you would have seen me do the bottom half of this gutter yesterday. I was just tickling under here where I'd been replaced these two bits of gutters. So basically I'm trying to finish up this car because we're trying to get it back to the owner next week, by the Friday next week. So so we can, you know, complete a job. So it's been a fairly massive job. We actually did finish the driver's side yesterday. So this one's had minor filler work done on the quarter panel, because I had a gas filler hole here too. So obviously when you weld up that bit, you're sort of going to have a few warps, so that's not too bad. And of course you had to put some filler through here because this rust actually crept all the way around and all the way to there, so that one had a big piece replaced. I'm not sure if I need to go back in my old videos and remind myself of what I actually filmed on this car, but I know that the early days of working on this car I didn't film anything, so you missed out on the sill panels and the plenum chamber, and just lots and lots of work on this car. But this is what we're trying to do. This side is done. I mean, it's not perfect. I mean, it still needs to go to a painter and they're going to tweak it a bit more, but all the rust is done and light filler work has been done on that quarter panel. So that's what we're giving it back to. Like, this car was super rusty. Like, it looked good, but had way more than you think. Oh, and the other thing we've got to tackle before Friday next week is the hole in the roof just there. Some of these holes in that midsection. So what we're going to try and do is finish both sides and then just focus, turn the car around and then focus solely in this region and finish it off. And then we'll be all good. As I smack my elbow as I walk past the car. So yeah, that's what today's plan is. I'll run you through some of the stuff I'm using. This is my favourite kind of filler. Rage Gold. Super cheap. Well, it's not super cheap, actually. I say super cheap, but it's not cheap bog, it's really good bog. Like, it's actually really good bog. But for some reason it's not really expensive. If you went to somewhere like Super Cheap Auto, or you know, Repco or Sprints or something like that, or whatever car places you have in the other states, don't ever buy your bog in those little tins, because that is the most expensive way to buy bog ever. Go to a crash shop supplier and buy your bog in a big tin. You might think it's stupid buying it like that, but one of those little tins, which is like, you know, that big, is the same price as that. So that's why I sort of say don't buy the little stuff. It's also not as good quality as this stuff. This is like industry standard. Well, I've definitely seen it in many different crash shops being used. Every crash shop and every person has their favourite type of filler. This just happens to be mine. This one is different to this one. So that's Rage Gold and this is Rage Ultra. So this is for doing finer work, and this is for what I like to call filling craters. It's got very good filling abilities, whereas this has got very good like leveling abilities. And then there is not on my bench, just bear with me a second as I open the cupboard. There it is. We have Dolphin Glaze, which is one of my favourite products. It's a self-leveling, well, it claims to be self-leveling filler, and this is really good stuff. This stuff sticks to anything I've found, and actually, I don't know if many people have dealt with the Ford Performance bumper bars in the past, which are like GT Falcons and stuff, of the modern stuff. The bumper bars are made of like a yellow injected foam plastic or something, and it's really hard to repair, but this is the only filler I've found that will stick to it with no issues. That's a hint for anybody working on those in the future. I don't know what this, it's like glue to anything, it sticks to anything. I'm quite impressed by it. That's also really good for doing finer filler work and stuff. And if you had to do a little repair over the top of paintwork, which I strongly recommend you don't, this is about the only stuff that I think has very minimal shrink back. I found it to not have too many issues, but I certainly wouldn't put any of this stuff over the top of paintwork. This stuff really prefers to go straight on bare steel, especially this stuff, and that's how I like to do it. I always get my tin, I go, alright, Rage Gold, Evercoat, blah 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 blah. I'll then go on the computer and I'll look up the data sheet for it, and it will tell me everything about it and what it's supposed to go on. Because the old argument is you shouldn't put bog over bare steel, but there are some that are designed to go on bare steel. I'm sorry, but it's one of the biggest arguments in the bog and bondo world that you'll ever have, and it's one of those things, there's like 400 different ways to repair things, and a lot of them are correct. So as I say in the classics, you do you and I'll sort me. You do what you like and I'll do what I like. Both of us could be correct. I just don't want to have any arguments. And I'm just going to show you how I do it. And if you do it differently, that's fantastic. You do it your way. So I got myself a steel applicator. And I obviously taped up. And you can tell it's been around for a while. I put masking tape on one end because they're pointy. And I've stabbed myself multiple times in the past. And I like to do that. I like the steel ones, and they've got to be fairly flimsy too, because you want to do that. If I'm going to do a really big piece, I use bigger applicators. Super handy for doing larger areas. You can just go and it's all done in one go. I then run over things with my palm sander with about 80 grit. And then once that's done and it's looking smooth, I'll then guide coat it. And then if it's not a huge area, I'll use a board file with 120 and straighten it out again. And then obviously work your way through it till it's perfect. But we're not going too nuts today, we're just roughing it out. But I thought I'd run you through some of the stuff. So that's your hardeners, that's your onion board, basically a giant notepad. You mix your bog on, once you're done, throw your sheet in the bin. No clean. And I also have in here an old paint pot full of leftover gun wash and thinners and all sorts of good stuff with a scotchy in it. So I mix my bog on this, move this over here once I'm done, put this over here, get the scotchy, clean the applicator both sides, wipe it off with a rag, ready to go again. And do that before it's fully dry. That's the only other piece of advice I can give you. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a nice little time lapse or speed video, whatever, of me bare metaling that quarter panel, and we'll get stuck into looking for little pinholes or anything I might have missed during a weld. And there we have it, chaps. Now you can see where all the welds are, where all the joins are, and you could see that I ain't no magician. But it's funny, with the grey primer and you sand off, it really looks worse than it is, but it's actually not that distorted. It's actually very, very smooth, and I generally come along and tap it up. But of course, if you shadow something with like grey primer and then come to sand it off, everywhere there's even the slightest imperfection, it will make it look 10 times worse. Not trying to defend myself, but it isn't as bad as it looks. And then of course, ultimately, that's why we have fillers. So now we're going to do some filler work after I zap up 3 little baby holes. Because I really want to show that it's not as bad as it looks, the grey primer makes it look 10 times worse, especially from that angle, which is weird. I've profiled the other quarter panel in a spot, and I'm like, oh, I really want to show that it's not that bad. I don't know if this is actually going to work. So that's just there. Where was it? It's just there somewhere. We're not talking a hell of a lot of deviation. So that looks worse than it is, thanks to the primer, but it really isn't miles out. Right, chaps, we are going to do some bogging. I've already started doing some after I did end up doing a rust repair, because, you know, when you weld up a little hole and it just doesn't go away, I investigated further and it turned out to be a rust hole, and I was like, you son of a... It was like on the edge of a repair, so the rust actually must have been a bit further along than I must have missed it, but that's alright. This is why we come back and play catch up and just double check we've got everything right. So I ended up doing another rust repair, but it was so minor I was sort of like, I won't bother filming that one. Basically, you cut the rust, clean the rust, weld in a patch, that simple. So, I get my tin, I drop the lid, pick up the lid, and I was going to say, on the cans it basically tells you what the ratios are. So obviously the bigger one is that bog, and the little stripe is the hardener. Couldn't be simpler. I just go on a theory of, you know, a blob and a smaller blob, and depending on the temperature of the workshop or wherever you are, will determine how quickly it goes off. So like that. So I'm doing a fairly big bit. Two of those. Yeah. Put it back on. This bog does eventually dry out. Now some people go bloop and put their hardener on there. I do not. On the off chance that your phone rings or someone interrupts you before you go, and if you put it across there, your bog starts going off just underneath it, so you ruin it. Or especially if you do this, you can double check that nobody's going to interrupt you, then you can mix it. Whereas if you put it like I'm going to do here, there we go, you can leave that all day long, and about the worst thing will happen is it might get some dirt blown into it, but at least they're not going to go off together and end up wasting your materials. So chaps, I've got my stuff and my goods. The best thing about an onion board is it gives you a pretty good way to hold it. And of course, the other thing is, another thing just like Bob going on right things, there's about 1,000 different ways to mix it. Everybody's got their preferred method. This is mine. Basically, you just want to make sure that it's all a uniform colour. It's not got any real streaks in it. It will turn green eventually. I mean, Bob changes colour depending on what its, you know, the basic colour is and what colour the hardener is. And sometimes you get pink bog, green bog, blue bog, all sorts of stuff. And you get a little bit of a time limit. A cooler day it'll take longer to go off. Hot days it'll go off in about 10 seconds. So hot days, put a lot less hardener in it. But mind you, if you don't put any hardener in it, it'll never go off. So my trick is just to get it on the panel. Yeah, that looks mixed enough to me. By the way, don't try and get it perfect, you won't get it. Most people try and get bog perfect first go. it's very rare to get the first application of bog right. It is near impossible. You nearly always have to go over it multiple times. Very rarely do you actually get it right first go. Now what we're trying to do is keep it in that midsection where the weld is, because we don't need it down here, because you won't be putting any bog down here because it's not anything wrong with it. And just like that, it started to go off, and you can see it. So you pretty much leave it alone for about 10 to 15. Basically, if you want to know when it goes off, if you can scratch it with your nail. I don't have nails really. Maybe I'll try the edge of the hammer. Yeah. If you can leave a scratch in it, it's pretty much done. I've just wiped semi-dry bog on that. But yeah, that's basically the easiest way to tell if it goes off. It's not hard. I mean, it's not like sticky. So that'll take 15, thereabouts. If you get to it too soon, it'll clog the living snot out of the sandpaper and you chew through your sandpaper real quick. You really want it to be dry. The other thing is, ideally, you want to skim most of the panel, because like here, when you go to sand this, you'll probably end up with a dip through there. So if you can skim the whole thing and sand it all together as one thing, even if you have to apply it in separate stages, as long as it's all dry, you should be able to sand it all at the same time, and you shouldn't end up with waves through it in theory, but of course it all comes down to how good you block things. So when this dries, I'll run over it with 80 grit and shape it up, and then I'll guide coat it, and then run a board file over it, and then go again, and probably 3 to 4 times before that's right. And I'll probably skim up to here and here, and basically there's zero need to do any bog through here, so no point putting it there. Keep it out of the style line. I mean, obviously I have to sand that out, but no need and no need. So basically this is just going to be right through the midsection where all the repairs were. And of course, while talking, I've just let this go off on this thing, so this is going to be painful to get off. So we've done the first once over. It's been run over with the sander on 80 grit. The reason I suggest bog over steel is because it feathers out really nice, and when they talk about feathering out, that's what they mean, sort of the transition is just dead smooth. And obviously that's a couple of low spots, a couple of high spots, but that's good for one skim. The main reason I'm probably not going to do too much more filming of the bog work and the sanding is bog dust gets everywhere, and this is a $1,000 camera, and I'd really like the two not to get overly well acquainted with each other. So I'm going to sand through there and do another lot. Pretty much it's just the same stuff over and over again until it's right. So probably what I'll do, now that you've seen a fair bit of it, it's just a repeat over and over again until it's right, and I'll probably do it at least two more times before I'm happy with it, at least, and I'll probably have skimmed all the way through there to make it right. But that's the general gist of it. And now I'm going to put the camera far away from the bog dust, because it really because it's so fine it gets everywhere, so I don't really want to wreck the camera. And I can always recommend wear a dust mask if you don't want to get a nice dose of cancer. Of course it doesn't kill you straight away, does it? But yes, that's what we're up to, and I'll catch you up in a second. And there we have it, chaps. Repeat steps 1, 2, 400 times and you will have your achieved goal. So I've just tickled a couple of areas up there, one little spot here, and basically just kept it focused through there. I've also sanded with 80 grit on the palm sander multiple times till I was happy with it, and then I ran over it with 2 types of board files, my shorty one and a long one. If you don't have one of these for doing bodywork, I strongly recommend you go get one, because I should have filmed it, but I don't want bog dust all over my camera, so I didn't. But there was a big low through here and I didn't see it until I ran over it with the board file, which is fantastic. So, and then I just gave it a very light once over once I was done with 120, and then we're going to throw some etch on it because I'm not taking it to its final shape. All this is a head start for the painter. That's all I was supposed to do. Was just do, well, technically all I was supposed to do was my repairs, but I've just gone and made it a little bit better because, you know, I like to make things as good as I can for the next person. So all the painter has to do is prep sol off or thinners off the etch primer, which pretty much wipes off with the right sort of ingredient, and then he can just start doing whatever bodywork he likes straight over the top. And all he knows is that it's bare steel and then a little bit of filler, and you can see it's not stupidly thick because there's some steel that are just sort of showing through in a couple of key areas, so you know it's not, well, as you saw by the profile gauge, it's not horrendously thick. It looks, people always freak out when they see bodywork, but every single resto shop and crash shop use it. It's used everywhere. There's not many places that won't use it, so don't take it to a ooh la la shop and think they won't put a ton of it in your car. They will. I've only met a couple of people in my time who will metal finish cars, but I can tell you, you don't want the bill for that because it's horrendous. Although you get a really good job. I saw one car this guy had done. He'd done all the repairs and then he metal finished every single rust repair. But I believe the bill for the bodywork was about $100,000, so you know, you can sort of see why people don't do it very often. But we've also worked out in our time spent in the shop now that there's a few things. You pretty much spend about $20,000 doing the metal work, then you spend about 10 grand doing the paint work. You'll spend close to another 10 on a Mickey Mouse interior. You'll spend about 15 on the driveline, and then a pile of other miscellaneous stuff. So that still brings me back to my original point of buy the best car you can at day one. It will pay off in the long run. Don't just settle, oh, this car is the shape I want. Yeah, okay, that might be the car you want, but I strongly recommend you get the best one you can, because restoring a car takes years and a lot of money. They're just my pointers. So we're going to wrap up the video here after I throw some etch primer on, I believe. Yep, there it is. That's what I've been using. If I'm just trying to protect it for a short while, if I'm trying to protect it for a long while, Epitech. But this stuff wipes off pretty easily, but it's really good stuff. If you're doing just a small repair, perfectly acceptable stuff. But I only use it just to stop it from rusting. So I hope you've enjoyed this bodywork related episode. I'll try and keep more stuff coming. Next week probably will be starting on the firewall section and finishing off this car, so that'll be good. And I really hope the owner's happy. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Click that subscribe button, it really helps out. And thank you all for helping me get to 2,000 subscribers. It was a pretty immense milestone for me, so thank you.